Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from the capital of Northern BC, Prince George. Beautiful day in Prince George, midsummer day, not too much smoke around, that's good, and not too hot, that's probably good too. And today a special guest, her name is Deb Ross.
Yes.
Welcome to the show, Deb.
Thank you, John. Thank you for having me.
So, we've known each other for a while.
We have. Actually, my husband interviewed you on his radio program about 20 years ago.
Oof.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes, he had a financial talk show called Dollars and Cents on
Okay.
CKPG, the radio part of CKPG.
Yeah.
Yes.
And CKPG is the local,
Yes.
for our guests around the world, is the local radio show. What is your husband's name?
Jerry Ross.
Jerry Ross.
Yeah, so
Is he still doing radio? Is he retired?
No, he is retired. So he managed investments and that kind of thing and kept his eyes very, very clearly on stocks. And now we have a cattle operation. So he still keeps his eye on stock. It's just the cattle variety instead of the actual stocks on the market.
Right.
Different market.
Different market. Yeah. Different job.
Yes.
Really, probably less stressful, I would hope.
Oh, the farm life is a beautiful life. I think it's wonderful for children to be raised on a farm and to have that exposure to the cycle of life and the value of animals and the work that goes into actually providing good organic meat on your plate.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. We have a lot to be grateful for.
So we'll talk about it a little bit more later. So just to know a little bit more about you, you are from BC. I believe you were born in Vancouver.
Yes, I was.
And how long were you in, how long have you been in you came to Prince George, I think, around 2000?
2000, yeah.
And so before that, your training, your high school and all the other kind of things you did in Vancouver. So tell us a little bit about your background. Now, the other thing that I find interesting in different ways and challenging likely for you, you grew up in a family and your dad had an addiction issue.
Yes.
And that is not anything unique, but for you to talk about it, because I know you had it in your bio, you allowed me to talk about it, and is something that is not overly uncommon now. Maybe it wasn't in the past either, but he had an addiction problem, and then we'll talk about that a little bit more if you feel comfortable with it. Then he got away from it, and then he wanted to help other people, and he became a minister of a Christian school or Christian church, and coached them subsequently, obviously. Tell us a little bit about that. How did it affect your life? Did you have siblings, or do you have siblings?
Yes. So you've got some of the details, but I'll flesh it out a little bit for you. So my father was a heroin addict.
Yeah.
And he was homeless. He lived on the streets as well.
In Vancouver?
In Vancouver.
Yeah.
Yes. And he was a German immigrant, came over during the Second World War. So there was an awful lot of rejection of German immigrants at that time. And
what time would it have been?
40s.
Before the war even started? Well, it started, but not really.
So into the 40s. But they did escape. It did escape Eastern Germany and went through Europe, and then eventually got to Canada. And that took quite an effort for them to actually get into Canada. And my grandmother and her two boys settled in Chilliwack.
Okay.
And
the
so
whole
he was raised in
family
Chilliwack.
came then?
Yes, they did. Yeah, so, what was left of the family, unfortunately. There was a lot of lives lost, as you are very well aware.
Yeah.
So then when he came to Canada, he didn't speak any English whatsoever, very familiar to you as well.
Yeah.
And then going to school, and he also had ears that stuck out really badly.
Okay.
So he was pretty much the brunt of all the jokes and ridicule because he couldn't speak English, and he had the ears. He did eventually get some surgery on that, but as a small child, he was picked on and bullied, and that he was quite a target, quite an easy target.
Yeah.
And so as his life progressed, there was just a lot of rejection and a lot of trauma from the war and everything that he had been through as a small child. And in his early 20s is when he started getting into trouble. And he used heroin for the first time in the 60s in Ocala Penitentiary, which was in Burnaby.
Now, I was born in 1940, November the 1st, 1940, in northeastern Holland.
Yes.
So the war had already started then. Invasion of Holland was around April, May of 1940. Just to put it into perspective.
Very similar timelines.
Yeah.
So when he used heroin in Ocala, they were sharing needles.
Can I ask as to why he was in prison?
Oh, I imagine just the whole life of getting into trouble and getting into mischief and having an aimless life and looking for acceptance in a group of people.
Yeah.
And the drug addicts offered that.
Yeah.
Yes. So he actually contracted hepatitis C from the very first injection of heroin. And that ended up being something that was a shadow over him for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
Yes. So that drug abuse and everything that goes along with being on the street and being in and out, being incarcerated many times, that definitely had an impact on him. He didn't have much education. So his communication.
Formal education.
That's right.
Yeah.
Very difficult. That's right. But it can be overcome.
Yeah.
So then from that point, he had jobs, didn't have jobs, had jobs, didn't have jobs.
So I hear that to a certain extent is PTSD.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with you.
Yeah, because I was affected by that, the inner child for one, and a lot of people maybe are not familiar with the inner child. It is where, you are in a family that is already in distress, and there is only one parent, in particular, then a young person. Like in my case, I was born in 1940. My dad was part of the Dutch army. The last time that they heard from him was in the bombing of Rotterdam, and then for a long time they did not know if he was dead or alive. For 5 years my mom had 3 children.
Yeah.
I was the youngest, my sister 1 year older, my brother 2 years older. And there was always a fear inside of me, likely, that of losing that parent. So it was the little boy inside that stayed there until I had counseling, even in my late 50s. Very emotional, actually, to deal with it.
Yes.
So that, I just explained it a little bit for those that maybe are not familiar with the inner child. That's what it was, And then PTSD, we're all familiar with, is being exposed to trauma.
Yeah.
Obviously during the Second World War and the liberation, we saw far too much that we should not have seen.
So much atrocity.
Yeah,
so
and that
much.
affects you.
Yeah.
So coming back to your dad then, people can be very hard on others.
They can.
Unfortunately, at times, I remember even when I came to Canada in July 1965, sometimes, I would be looked at as a deep here. And why don't you go back where you came from? That kind of a thing.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that is as common.
So you're saying
now
the DP, like the displaced person?
Yeah.
Yes.
And that means a displaced person, right? So and then it can be pretty hard, to kind of acquire the skills that speaking or learning the language and all the other kind of things that are around it.
And
So
that
then-
sense of belonging,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
You are that displaced person. I mean, we can say that about a lot of people right now that are in our community. They act, and I shouldn't say they act, they are treated as displaced people.
Yeah.
And they don't, that sense of belonging is so important.
so critically,
Yes.
right? So because a lot of times, like in my case, your dad's case, and others that you refer to, cannot fully speak the language maybe, or not at all. Like when I came here, I knew yes and no, and that was about it, so
It's not enough.
and that is not enough. So it took then not very long, and then learn the language being fully engaged. But anyway, so then what happened with your dad?
Well, he ended up meeting my mother.
So initially, I just kind of want to get a feel of he started with heroin, and he got the first injection.
Yes.
That is the critical one that then gave him a sense of comfort maybe,
Yeah.
and he became addicted to it. That got him into trouble, likely in some form or fashion. And then and I'm just imagining, correct me if I'm wrong, he ended up in prison
Many times.
many times.
Yeah. Many times. Because that.
Were
that
you
ent-
already born then?
No.
No, that must be before you must
Yeah.
even met
That's
your
right.
mom.
And he was still having issues when he met my mother. But my
Yeah.
mother is a very patient woman. And she saw something in my dad that not a lot of people saw.
Was he Canadian?
Yes. Yes.
yeah, interesting.
She is Canadian.
From Vancouver?
No, she was from Calgary.
Okay.
And she was a nurse in Vancouver. So they got together and they got married, and he struggled with the concept of having responsibilities. He liked the idea of being married and that, they were expecting me, but he was being very overwhelmed in his early recovery journey, getting recovered from drugs. And he tells the story of going to the hospital, and my mother had me, and he took one look at this baby, and he knew that his life was forever changed. And he left the hospital. He went to the corner and he scored his heroin. He went to our home bathroom and he stuck the needle in his arm, and he put half the drugs in, and he realized, I can't do this anymore. He pulled it out of his arm, he threw it in the trash, he took the rest of the drugs he had purchased, flushed it down the toilet, and that was the last time he used drugs.
Is he still alive?
No, he is not.
Oh, yeah. So how old would he have been then?
He would have been 29,
Yeah.
about 29, 28,
Yeah.
29.
And so you don't hear that very often,
No.
that because we both know that, that we've been around the addiction, we see it here
Yes.
in a very, very bad way, right? So, that once, for the young people in particular, it's so easy to become caught by it,
Yes. It's definitely a very thick and strong trap. But when you said we see addiction here, we actually just see one part of their story.
right.
There's trauma there's trauma current,
Correct.
and there's trauma in their
No
future.
question about
And
that.
all we see is that one little part.
Correct. Yeah.
And a lot of people in our community don't like to look at that
Yeah.
one little part.
No, but that's what it is.
Yes.
And to know the background of those individuals, what you will find highly likely is trauma.
Yes.
And
absolutely. And unresolved and sometimes unresolvable
Yeah.
trauma.
Yeah.
Yes.
One hopes that is not the case, but in a lot of cases it is
Yeah.
unresolvable. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, you've been exposed to it substantially, so have I to a certain extent. If you want to resolve, or the person affected by it like your dad is while he's injecting himself, with, and then halfway through, the full injection, pull it out and say that's the end.
That's it.
A lot of people don't have the strength to do that. And then to take whatever they have and throw it away and then staying the course.
Yes.
Doesn't come natural.
No.
It doesn't,
No.
so because there is ongoing, it does not mean then everything is what we like to call normal. Now I want to earn a living, I'm married now, we're going to have a family, I'm going to work and blah, blah, blah. No, there's still a lot of other issues to be resolved, even for that person.
Yes.
And then the attraction to the heroin or whatever it may be will take time to get it out of your mind and out of your physical.
Oh, yes. So there's a great deal of detox that's involved in that.
Yeah.
But my father would say that he always liked heroin. That never went away. He just lived differently.
Yeah.
And he lived for different things.
So it is like, although it's not the same, but just like alcoholic, that in a lot of cases they remain to be alcoholics and they cannot afford themselves to kind of get back caught by the alcohol again.
Right.
Because, they always remain cautious of it.
Yes.
At one point in life, I had drinking too much and become addictive to it in the sense that became kind of a closet alcoholic. I would go home, and Scotch and water was mine. I don't know. But in any event.
You're being very vulnerable right now, and I want to say thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. So so the reason that I was smoking, I was drinking, and then I was also addicted to Xanax as a prescription.
Yes.
By a doc, and then my wife my girlfriend then, I was in love with her, and she dumped me, hit me with a 2x4, not physically, but say, okay, yeah, you're out of my life, no more of this. And so within 1 week, I quit alcohol, I quit smoking. I smoked a pipe then in the transition, equally addictive, and then Xanax, and I never had it again after that, and then after that, quite a number of months later, we got back together again. She's my wife now for the last 40 years, but the hardest thing to get rid of, Xanax.
Well, I can see that, because you're a very driven person.
Yeah.
And that would have just paralleled with your drive.
Right.
Yes.
So, okay, going back to your dad.
Sure.
So then, they got married.
They did. And they had a baby. And then he stopped using drugs.
Only one?
They did have another baby, yes.
Okay.
My sister.
Okay.
And then he worked as a hairstylist, like a barber.
Okay.
Because that wasn't the term. You couldn't advertise barber during that time. You had to be a hairstylist, right?
Okay.
Because it was kind of artsy. And then he became like a chaplain in prisons.
Okay.
So he would travel to the prisons and do counseling with the guys in the prison. And he saw a great need for when men were released from the prison and they were used to this structure and being told what to do and what to wear and here's your shoes and be here at this time. And then they're released into the community with no life skills.
Yeah.
nowhere to land.
Nobody to tell them what to do.
No. And then where did they go? They go to what's familiar to them,
Get back in trouble.
which is getting into mischief.
Yeah.
So he set up what are now called recovery houses.
In Vancouver?
Yes, so this was in Abbotsford.
Okay.
He set up recovery houses, and he built relationships with RCMP and parole officers, and even with the courts and the judges. And they built a program for men that had just become out of incarceration to come into a home that was
Transition.
a caring. It had structure.
Yeah.
There were all kinds of men that were going through various stages of recovery.
Yeah.
And they were given a place where they would be fed healthy food, given healthy structure, retraining or training into jobs.
Basically making the transition to life, right? Outside of prison.
So there's a belief that when a person starts self-medicating, whatever age that is, and some individuals start self-medicating very early, like 8, 9 years old, that is the ceiling of their emotional maturity, is as soon as they start self-medicating. So if we look at our prisons, or if we look at, that little snapshot of people that we see who are roaming our streets, our, modern day nomads out here, their emotional maturity could be very, very young. So us having an expectation on them to be responsible, to just stop using drugs. The saying, just say no to drugs. If they're 8 years old in their mind, how can we lay that expectation on these individuals?
No, exactly.
So when they would come out of prison and into that structure, it was that place where they could start growing beyond where they had stopped growing.
Yeah.
And that was with giving them a little bit of responsibility, holding them accountable within that framework that they could handle. But growing up is not an easy process for anyone.
No.
But someone coming out of jail at 35 years old and they're 8 years old in their mind, that's an even harder process for them. They need a lot of compassion.
Yeah, and do we still have that though? The transition facilities for people that come out of jail?
There are a few. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The ones that my father started, they have been folded into another organization. So my father has passed away. And then there was an organization that was looking after the houses that he had established and had managed. And now that has been taken over by a larger umbrella organization. Okay. Yes.
I sometimes think, as we all do, is that I grew up in Holland, right? So I was 24 when I came here with nothing, and $25.47.
Yes.
But different environment there, that they have their challenges too. But I always felt that not many people are in jail there proportionally. That's not the place. In most cases, non-violent prisoners should, in my opinion, not be in jail. It's the wrong environment to be in, and and that's even more so in the States than it likely is here. I don't know exactly the numbers, but I always kind of feel like that people that come out of jail and do not have a transition that allows them to come back to being accepted in the public and have hope of a normal life, at some point a job, and at some point maybe marriage, whatever they aspire to, in a house and all the other kind of things. And I'm not sure if we are doing that much. I see far too many people in jail. I see a lot of people that have to guard them and do all the other things, and I don't think that is the solution.
There are some wonderful things happening, very progressive with our restorative justice.
Okay.
And I'm hopeful that there are positive things happening, because I think there are a great many people that feel the same way that you do. Yes, and who are in a position of influence to do something about it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's how I feel about it, and I also agree with you. Like, I don't have the solution, but I know that I care, and I see that the challenges that the people that are here and appear to be a problem in a sense to a lot of people and or to a community, that, as you were saying, is all we see is this narrow them, and in that area we cannot fix it or help to bring them hopefully into another area unless we recognize that there is trauma that has to be addressed to a sense.
Yes.
And that person that is locked into 8 years old but really is 35 or 40 on their own a lot of times cannot make that transition, and they fall back into the same groove and then are rejected. And that's where the iffy, which we do have to look at, it's part of who we are and what we have,
Yes.
that we have to be more proactive in the sense of recognizing the challenge is that they are locked into trauma that has happened in the past, and then what we can do is recognize that and then go forward and help in counseling, and on a gradual basis hopefully include them in the process of helping others.
Yes.
And taking it forward and giving them hope.
Yes.
And opportunity, and I think that's kind of the way to look at it. Not where do we put them, how can we make sure
Yes.
they are not, it is not taking them from there and hiding them elsewhere.
Yes.
That's not the solution.
You know, you used a word in your description, and please don't take offense to this, but I'm not comfortable with referring to people as a problem.
Yeah.
I find that it's very easy for us to use that language because when we see something that looks so obvious to us, because we share in what would typically be called normal Canadian behavior, right? We're productive members of society. Yeah. We're doing our best to raise our families and to support our community and to love one another. But when there's a people group who are part of our community, when they're referred to as a problem, I have a little bit of an issue with that. And I'll explain why, but I would love to bring you into the compassion of why I don't look at that people group and that part of our community that way. When my father became a minister, he was volunteering in various capacities because he had this hope that he wanted to pass along to other people, and he saw this as such a valuable gift. So he started volunteering at a mission in Vancouver where they would feed the unhoused and addicted population of Vancouver. My mother was part of that, and also my sister. Now, I was married and off raising my family. I wasn't part of that. But my sister had a lot of strikes against her. Very, very similar parallel to my dad. So she had an undiagnosed learning disability. She had severe dyslexia. Amazing she made it through school at all. She was just called dumb, ignorant, you're not working hard enough, you're lazy. She was labeled all of these things, and it was turned out to be an undiagnosed learning disability that she struggled with, terribly so. I, on the other hand, excelled at sports and at all kinds of academics, and I just kind of took off, and I have to say, I feel some chagrin about this, that I didn't really notice that she wasn't with me because I was so busy and so involved in everything that I was focused on. And I would ask her, why are you not wanting to participate in this? Well, it was probably because she had to read something to be involved. But now we know. So she had a weight problem, she had a learning disability, and she had a great deal of rejection that she was dealing with and carrying that burden around with her. So they went downtown to volunteer at the mission. And she used drugs in Vancouver for the first time. And the group of addicts that they were volunteering with accepted her. They didn't judge her learning disability. They didn't judge her physical appearance. They didn't judge that anything that every other group that she was associated with judged. And she told me, when I was in that group and when I used the drugs, I felt like I came home for the first time.
Yeah.
And when you think about those words, I came home for the first time, that is heart-piercing.
Yeah.
We lost her to addiction, and that is a very sad thing. It was a very crushing situation for my father because he had lived his recovery in the home.
Yeah.
He had lived his life in recovery for other people and in a ministerial role as a chaplain to these men, only to lose his daughter in the addictions. He felt that it disqualified him for quite some time.
Yeah. He took it personal.
Well, how couldn't you? So I would have very honest conversations with my sister. Because during this time, it wasn't that we lost her to addiction and then she was gone forever. It didn't happen that way. She came out of addiction. She had a beautiful child. And then she went back into addiction. I took her child. He is now our son. And she went back into the addiction very full bore. And we did lose her. Now, having honest conversations, and as you can imagine, having an honest conversation with someone you're related to who is a drug addict and is not hiding this, they can get quite loud, these conversations. She told me, she said, I don't want you to fix me.
No.
Stop trying to fix me. Just love me.
Yeah. For who I am. And
she knew she was addicted. She knew this was not news to her. No. She was in that lifestyle.
She was home.
Yes. And we lost her.
Yeah.
But she taught me so much about having honest, compassionate conversations with people who are caught in addiction. And it's no longer just the person you're dealing with and the person that you're loving. It's the addiction as well.
Yeah.
And you're loving the person through the addiction.
Yeah.
And that's not as easy as it just sounded right there.
Yeah, no, but I believe that, and if I created that impression, I don't look at this as a problem.
Okay.
I think the community does, and a lot of people that want to fix it in their way are looking at it as a problem. I say no, there is trauma, and there are other things. Give them hope.
Yes. Yes. The love that we can share.
Yeah.
The truth and just being that person and being honest.
Yeah.
So we have that little cafe, Deb's Cafe and Specialty Bakery.
Yeah.
We, on purpose, build relationships with our unhoused community members.
Right.
I get to know their names, and in the time that I can share with them, get to know their stories.
I want to talk a little bit more about that part.
Okay.
So now, I think we're pretty much on the same wavelength as with the issues in terms of jails and incarceration, and then the people that have no homes or don't feel like have homes. It's part of where we are for whatever reason, and as the community we have to go beyond looking at the problem that we see, go beyond that, go back, and then look forward. What can we do? No different than your dad identified and in fact did, for a lot of times. So and I think that would be my feeling of it. Obviously it's yours from experience. Just talking about you a bit more, I know you had a good background, and then the good education, and then you were in the financial field as a financial advisor, and they call that be a consultant to people that want to know how to invest. So
I managed an office. I managed investment planning counsel for many, many years.
They call that an AFC?
So that is an accredited financial counselor. Okay. That's actually dealing with people who have debt. Okay. So I worked at a bankruptcy office for many years. Right. A couple bankruptcy offices. Right. Where I managed the office and staff, and then did the counseling with our bankruptcy and consumer proposal clients.
Yeah, trying to solve financial issues, right?
So then my background was counseling.
Right.
So I had the financial counseling portion, right, and then the individual couples financial counseling, right, which served very well in the financial issues, because many of our marital breakdowns and marital fighting actually play out in the money.
Exactly.
Yes.
Money is critical, that part always in relationships.
That's right. And then being in the office there, and also when I had my own practice, there were many telephone calls that I received where people were calling and they say, "This is my last phone call. I am heading to the bridge. I am jumping off the bridge." It's like, there's nothing left I can do. And I just think, I'm so glad you called, because there is so much that we can do. Oh, please turn around and come back. Let's go for coffee. Right. On me. Yeah. Since your credit cards are maxed, let's go for coffee. Let's talk about these things. Your life is so much more valuable than any dollar figure, whether it's in the negative or the positive.
Exactly.
Yes.
Desperation, right?
Desperation. End of hope.
And the hope.
Yes, we need to give love and hope to all kinds of people.
So you became very good at that. Part of it was your background, your education, obviously. You did that for a long time, right?
Did that for many years.
20 years?
Yes, just about.
And then your family is interesting, because you have 8 children.
I do.
Not always, the one son from your sister.
Yes.
Is part of your family.
Yes.
And then.
I love children.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I haven't met a child that I didn't love, and when some parents would say, "I'm so frustrated, would you take the child?" Like, gladly, if you're serious. There's lots of room in these arms to hug. Yes.
And obviously so does your husband.
Yes.
And then the other part that you guys, that makes you unique, is that you're in farming, and you guys got a farm on Peden Hill, in that area by the airport?
No, we are towards Red Rock.
Towards Red Rock.
Yes.
So Red Rock, again,
further.
for the guests that are watching us, is south of Prince George, going Highway 97.
Yes.
And it's halfway between Prince George and Hickson would be the next, and the next town is Quesnel. And so, how long have you had the farm there?
So we moved to Prince George in 2013.
2013.
Yes,
10 years.
Almost, that's 10 years now.
And then you have. What are the animals that you have there? I saw it. And
yes, we have an Italian breed called Piedmontese.
What are they? It's
just an Italian breed. It's. Are you familiar with the the Russian blue, or no, it's not called a Russian blue. I'm so sorry. Anyways, it's very low fat meat.
Is it a cow or
Cattle?
cattle?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So
What do they look
tender,
like color-wise?
white.
Okay, so but
They're white.
we have in Holland this black and white and the different
Yes.
type.
Yeah, so this is a dual purpose animal. It can be a milking animal, and it
Okay.
also is a meat animal. We raise them for meat animal.
Okay.
But the reason why my husband wanted the Piedmontese is they are missing a gene in their genetic code for having tough muscles. Like the stiffness and the connective tissue is very minimized.
Okay.
So when you have a Piedmontese steak, it's not a lot of fat on it, and it's just meat, but it's tender.
Interesting.
Yes.
So people like the Cake and other restaurants that specialize in meats in particular, would they specify looking for that?
No, not here in Canada. In Europe, yes.
Yeah.
You'll pay 75 to 100 euro for a Piedmontese steak.
Right.
In Europe.
Yeah.
Here, the Angus is what everyone is. That's the gold standard in Canada, and the US is Angus.
Why?
I think, honestly, if I look back, I think it's that the Angus Association did a great job on marketing Angus.
Right.
Yes, and so it's a staple at all the auctions, it's a staple in herds, and Angus is what they go for.
So just to get a kind of a feel, how big is your farm?
Like the acreage of our
Yeah.
farm, we only have 80 acres. We have
Well,
a small.
that's a big farm.
Well, I guess it's relative, right?
Well, 80 acres
We're
is a lot.
happy with 80, and it's
Yeah.
an efficient run farm.
So you have a house there,
Yes.
and then farm buildings.
Yes, we have outbuildings, and
And
then we
how
have our
many-
cattle operation. We have about 30 head right now.
Yeah.
And then we calve, and we have certain animals that go for our meat production. All of the meat that we use at our cafe, in our chilies or our hamburger soup,
Right.
that's all from our farm.
Right.
And I'm very insistent on having very healthy meat
Yeah.
in our food.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Well,
we provide.
all your food that you have, and I've seen what you're doing. We'll talk about that a little bit too.
Yes.
But I can tell right away that you're extremely conscientious of food of all descriptions, no matter what it is,
Yes.
to have healthy food and all the things that you do. And my wife in particular is very much particular. She's vegan though.
Yes.
I'm 80-20.
Yes.
You know, so
For sure.
yeah, but
I like to tell people who come in that all our cows are vegan as well.
yeah, that's. I like that.
So you're in good company.
Yeah. So, at what point did, so you have had that for 10 years, that keeps you busy. Then you were still doing things on the
Yes.
insolvency.
In the insolvency area.
And then at one point you said, okay, I'm going to change.
Yes. I wonder what that's about. Maybe we should put this book on top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's exactly.
That's
and
right.
what Deb is doing here, showing my books. I'm going to, for my guest, again, I'm just going to show my guest that the one book that I did, and I'm going to give Deb, before she leaves, a copy of this. It's called Against All Odds. And Against All Odds, I wrote that about 5 years ago, and it's not about hurrah, hurrah, John, how successful he was. It's not about that. It's just the opposite. It's saying, in spite of it all, I was not very successful in school. I failed grade 3, and I failed grade 7 3 times. And then I got a job. They said, well, what are we going to do with this guy? Send him to the mentally challenged school, or should we try to make a laborer out of him? Fortunately, they took the latter, and they got me a job at a furniture factory. So I became a furniture maker. And then I felt I didn't have the confidence. My brother Does it sound kind of familiar too?
Right.
Was very successful, went to university and became an architect and built a very successful company, in Holland, with that kind of a background. And for me, I always felt I had been a failure. And right up to probably the time that we were liberated by the Canadians, April the 12th, 1945, and it left such an impression with me that I always knew I would go to Canada, the land of my heroes.
Yes.
And I tried to go when I was 17. My parents wouldn't let me. I was drafted into the Dutch Air Force, actually for 2 years. And then, the other part is, I felt that I grew up in the lumber side of things. My grandfather was a master carpenter, and I wanted to build a lumber mill. And, that was my dream. And then the other one is, I felt I had to start all over again. I thought I was bright and smart as well. And so what I had to do, I knew in Holland what would happen is that if I wanted to get married, then I probably couldn't even buy a house, because every time I wanted to get a job, then you say, okay, where is your diplomas? Well, I had no diplomas, so I felt I had to totally start over again and to do that in Canada. So I left Holland when I was 24, came to Canada. I knew in British Columbia is where all the lumber mills are, and took the plane to Montreal, train to Vancouver, then went to the immigration office in Vancouver. Fortunately, there was a German fellow. I talked to him. I could speak some German. Told him what I wanted to do, build a sawmill. He said, Prince George, 1965. It's a boomtown. It was. And I went to Prince George.
Good choice.
Coming back to the book, fairly quickly, starting as a cleaner man, lumber piler, all the things happened fairly quickly for me, although I didn't speak the language, but very quickly I learned, and then became a superintendent. And then, after 2 years here in 1967, I went to the Yukon Territory, managed a mill in Watson Lake, bought a motel already in 2 years, and, and then it's all in my book, actually, in this book. And then went through all the ups and downs, came back to Prince George when, in 1975, wrote a business plan for the Brink group of companies, now nearly 50 years ago that I started. We have now about 10 different companies, and one is lumber, one is real estate, one is warehousing and logistics. And I felt I had to write a book about it. So it took me 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, and then 2 years to write it. It was grade 7, not very, amazingly, I'm a very good writer, and I'm very good at numbers. And so the book tells you all about the ups and downs, and that's the purpose of the book, really, is saying, that if I can do it, virtually anybody can do it with that kind of a background. I'm not saying that that's necessarily so, but, have your dreams, find your passion, and live the dream. And then the question is, John, are you living your dream? I am, no question about that. So then I did this one. And then by pure coincidence, what happened is that in 1997, when I was already 57 years old, I walked into the bookstore here on 3rd Avenue, and Books on 3rd it was called then. Now it's called Books and Company. Yeah. So I found it, walked in there, I have no idea why. Every so often I would go in there, I looked at this book, and the book's title was Driven to Distraction. So I looked at the book and I saw ADHD, and I read more and more of the book, even to the point the guy that owned said, "Are you going to buy it or what?" No, he didn't say that. But and anyway,
he looked at you a few times, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I said, "Oh my God, this is me," and so I wrote in the book in Dutch. Now finally, I know who I am, and that explained a whole lot of other things for me. So then I felt I had to write a book about it. Then 2 years ago, this one came out. ADHD, unlocked. I always thought that it probably is 8%, people said, of the population may be affected by it. I think it is closer to 20%. That the book is not only for the
sure.
purpose, yeah, the book is not only for those that are affected, or I say it's a superpower, or benefits from ADHD, that's how I look at it, but also for people that are affected by trauma, that become slow learners, or anything, those issues that cause them to become slow learners, and to read this. And then I say that at least 20% ADHD of the population, that anybody that should read, not necessarily preferably my book, but also the other ones that are available on ADHD, because not you, but in a general sense, you as well, obviously, but will encounter people that have ADHD, either in your family or in the broader circle of your friends, or the places you work, or in the world that you live in, is to understand them. They are somewhat a little bit different, but they still very, very interesting, and everybody should know that. So I suggest that they should read a book like this. I'm going to give you a copy. I'm going to sign it for you as well.
I was just going to ask, would you sign them too?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Now I know you have this one already.
Yes, I do.
But I'm going to give you another one that
Good.
I will sign.
Then I'll give one away.
I like that.
Okay.
And so this one again, I find there are so many people that say, I hate my job, and I want to do something, or it is, and then saying, finding your passion, living the dream. Or they're not happy with the job that they have, and they then would like to do something different, and they make the choice of doing that.
Very
and they
risky.
are enjoying. Example, Deb.
Yes.
Example, John. I love, you can have more than one passion. Just not, I'm very happy with lumber, but I'm doing podcasting, I'm a professional speaker. I'm also, doing podcasting, obviously, and
I hear you lift heavy things off the ground and put them over your head and put them back down again.
Supposedly I'm the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America.
Yeah.
And I love that. Competed for the nationals in the Arnolds, and even still today I'm doing that. The interesting about finding your passion is that I heard that or read it about comments that were made by some experts. They say that in the United States this is, and I believe Canada would be the same, up to 70% of the people don't particularly like their jobs. And up to 75% of the people are looking for another job. And those are fairly staggering numbers.
They are.
I wanted to make sure that this book, Finding Your Passion, Living the Dream, does not say that you have to leave your job, but you can do other things the way you can find your passion. And I suggest they should be reading this one. I'm going to sign this one for you.
Thank you.
And all those books I did also the audio side of it, all the books, and make sure that they are available on all the major medias or Amazon, and they're also available in audio form.
Yes. So I put that one on top.
Good.
Because
Yeah.
my passion is my little cafe and specialty bakery.
And so that's what I want to talk about now.
Yes.
Is now you have the farm. Still, you were very successful on being a financial consultant, or in your role
Counselor. Yes.
You were very successful. So what happened?
My kids grew up.
Yeah.
And you blink and what happened? Where did all that time go? The other issue is about nine years ago, I had some health blood work done on me, and it was discovered that I had it appeared to be the beginnings of a liver condition.
Okay.
That was not good.
Yeah.
And we looked at, first of all, our eating and our lifestyle, our activity level, that type of thing. And I thought we were eating pretty healthy. Right? We're, my husband and our family, we are all about stewardship of animals, both hunting and farming. We taught our children very young that when we go and harvest an animal out of our beautiful backcountry, that we not only use everything with the animal, and leftovers never went in the trash, because our children worked to get that animal out of the woods. They knew how much effort went into putting that moose steak on the plate. But then you also learn, well, you think, well, we're eating very healthy, we're ticking all the boxes. But my liver enzymes were very high. And at that time, my husband was very concerned. And he did some research, and this was back before the low carb. You've probably heard the ketogenic diet. That's kind of become maybe a little trendy. It was before that was popular, and he took a look at this research and he said, I think you need to take serious note of this type of eating. And I looked at what the parameters for that eating style were, and it just blew my mind, because it was completely counterintuitive to everything that you hear about, like, the Canadian food pyramid. It basically took that pyramid and turned it upside down, which is very difficult for someone who is a compliant person and likes to follow the rules and make sure that I've got my grains and my low fat and my high carb. And my husband said, no, it looks like we need to follow this. So back at that time, the ketogenic diet was actually developed for brain issues in children who were epileptic, because they found that when they reduced the carbs, or took away most of the carbs, and increased the fat, the brain's signals were more easily communicating with one another, and the seizures drastically reduced without the use of medication. So that was the beginnings of the ketogenic diet. It also, they found through Dr. Perlmutter's research, that it also helps with ADHD. So thus began us completely changing my eating, where sugar was completely taken out of our home, no honey, nothing, no maple syrup. It was completely removed. Now remember, I'm entering into a very unknown territory where you just can't go and get a new liver. Like, this is a major part of our functioning. So all the sugar was out, potatoes were out, bread was out, and then we were left with a very small amount of fruit, mostly berries. We had our meat, our farm meat, and we had our wild game, and then we were getting butter, high fat milk, whipped cream basically. And I looked at this, I said, none of this makes sense if you look at it through the lens of the regular Canadian diet. It took 6 months, and my liver enzymes were in perfect position. My husband had had blood work done as well, and his bad cholesterol was high and his low cholesterol was low at the beginning of this eating plan. 6 months later, those numbers had reversed. And the doctor took a look at that and said, I've never seen this happen. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. I'm too busy to find out what it is, but more power to you. So then began the time of, we have children and we have grandchildren, and I wanted to bake things for them that I could have. Because of course I was foregoing the birthday cake and the ice cream and the cookies and things.
No longer part of the diet?
No. And
for anybody?
Yeah. And I found that the happiness around food was missing. I was very grateful to have my liver completely healed.
Yeah.
But the celebration and just the joyous experience of having that dessert and having that enjoyment, being able to go out with someone and have a good cup of coffee and a nice sweet treat, didn't exist for me. The other thing that I found was the friendships that I had developed with various women in the community. I was the problem person being invited for lunch because I couldn't have this and I couldn't have that. And well, can we do this? Can we hold that? And so, you know, when women work, you only get a certain amount of time for lunch. So, well, let's not invite Deb because we can't really work with her eating program. And those relationships sort of drifted apart, which was sad to me as well. So now we go down the journey of creating recipes that are low carb and high fat, sugar-free, but taste good and are good for you, both your body and your soul. And so that's what we've done.
So when you acquired the restaurant and the building that is Stantec?
Stantec, yeah.
The Stantec Building, which is the building across from the swimming pool, used to be the Simon Fraser Hotel there.
So it's the Canfor Leisure, Family Leisure Pool?
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
That's right across from there.
Right across from there on 7th
is that
in Quebec.
7th?
7th in Quebec.
7th in Quebec. You have the unique restaurant that has totally changed. I go in there frequently because quite a number of the services that I use a lot, including my law firm, is located there. And you know, and everything has changed.
Yes.
You know, so how long ago was it that you acquired the restaurant?
So I purchased the cafe in 2018. Is that right?
Just before COVID.
19, right?
Just before COVID.
Yes. Yeah, must be 2019. And then 6 months later, we were shut down for COVID.
Yeah.
We were just getting
Timing
legs.
was impeccable, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a bit of an adventure.
Yeah.
However, I'm very grateful because in our business ventures, particularly given the past experience of dealing with people in insolvency, we don't use debt in our lives. And so we just sailed through COVID as a family comfortably, and you know, we paid our bills, but we were so early in our having the restaurant. I didn't qualify for the government giving money out here and there and here and there.
Yeah.
It's like, that's okay, give it to someone else.
Yeah, please.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So then when we came back, it actually gave us time to tweak a few recipes here and there, and we do have many people who volunteer, because my daughter Hannah, she's our main baker at the cafe, and she gets very creative. So last week she made a chocolate pie. So it has an almond crust and a chocolate cream cheese pie, and no sugar. Completely healthy for you.
Yeah, I love it.
You love the idea, yes?
My wife loves it because my wife is just like you. She, you know, is very, very conscientious of diet and fits into the category. You know, nobody wants to go out for, I'm not saying she goes out for lunch with some people, not very many, because she's so selective in terms of she doesn't do that, this and the other.
Right, yes.
And so I'm 80-20, so I'm trying to be very, very careful as well.
Yes.
Before I forget, I just want to make sure, before we go further on the restaurant, I know you have 8 children.
Yeah.
Give me their names. Anna is the oldest?
No, no. My oldest is Charity, and she is married. She has 5 children.
Okay.
And then
you have 18 grandchildren.
How did I get 3 more?
I don't know.
Are you giving me some?
15?
15 grandchildren.
Okay, so
yes.
I'm close to
I mean, I'll take them.
Okay.
So my oldest is Charity. She and her husband live in Leduc, and they have 5 children.
Okay.
My next oldest is Angela, and she's got 1 son. And
Where
then
does she live?
She lives here in Prince George.
Okay,
Yes,
good.
lovely to see her as often as we can. My son Stephen, he lives in Ontario, and he and his wife, they have 2 boys.
Okay.
My next daughter, her name is Krista, and she's got 4 daughters, and she lives in Leduc as well.
In where?
Leduc, in Alberta.
In Alberta, yeah.
Yes. My son Christopher and his wife, they live in Prince George, and they have 3. They just had a brand new one, not even 2 weeks ago.
Beautiful.
Oh, he fits right here.
Yeah.
Oh, just
So
warms
sweet,
my heart. So then my daughter Hannah, so she is going to college as well as she is my main baker.
So what is she taking in college?
She's taking business management.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm
good.
pretty sure with all her experience, she could teach the course. However,
Right.
she's taking business management.
I love it.
Yeah. So then my next son, Michael, he just got married in May, and his wife Rosetta, she works with us full time in the cafe.
Okay.
And then my next son is Benjamin, and that's our number 8.
He's the youngest among the
Yes,
family.
he is.
So, yeah, I just want to make sure that we all get to know them.
Yes, they're
this
all
way they
wonderful.
are all part of the...
Wonderful people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So take me a little bit further then. Now we are, oh my goodness gracious, now we got COVID
Now we
for
got
2
COVID.
years.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
that all kind of semi came to an end, and now as I walk by there, things are changing, you know.
Yes. Yes. So we did a renovation in
Yeah.
our kitchen.
Yeah, I noticed that,
I
yeah.
wanted it to feel like you were stepping into your mom's kitchen.
Yeah.
So we recycled the kitchen.
Yeah.
Someone was renovating and getting rid of their oak cabinetry.
Right.
So we recycled the kitchen, and I refinished all of the cupboard doors, and Hannah and a really good friend of ours and Michael and Ben, we all worked and did the renovation ourselves, and we just got everything all bright, and it feels like, I have a lot of people say, I feel like I'm in your home.
Yeah.
And I said, good, because you're welcome.
Yeah, because that's the way it feels.
This is a
If I
welcome
walk
place.
by there, I
Yeah.
said, you know, my goodness, this
Yeah.
looks different.
Yes.
And then the other part about it is that everything is healthy.
Yes.
You know, and so it makes you and your group. What is the name of the restaurant?
It's called Deb's Cafe and Specialty Bakery.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you sell bakery as well then?
Yes.
Oh,
We sell
yes.
all our baking. Our website has special orders.
Oh, so the website is
www, of course,
Yeah.
debscafe.ca.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And people can order big orders, birthday cakes, whatever on that
Okay.
site. And all our baking is sugar-free and gluten-free.
Yeah.
Yes.
All healthy.
It
right?
is healthy, and it tastes good too.
Yeah, it does. I know that because I tried it. So,
Yes.
and it's close by downtown.
Yes, it
Because
is.
Quebec and 7th is virtually around the center of town. It's very close to where we are sitting, actually.
It actually is very close.
A couple of
Yeah,
blocks away.
right there.
Nice walk, you know, but it's, so your client base is the downtown, but more and more people, as they hear about, you know, what you're doing, it will get busier because,
Yes. So there's something very unique about this baking.
Okay.
And I feel very blessed to have gone through the challenge with my liver in
Yeah.
order to get to this place.
absolutely.
Because we are able to create healthy food from healthy products that do not impact blood sugar.
I
Now,
love it.
this was the benefit that we didn't see right away because we were looking
You
at,
had to live it.
yes, but we were looking at healing liver
Right.
issues, getting cholesterol in the right proportions. Then when we looked at this and we had diabetic people come and say, well, could I try this? And now so many people have the CGMs, the continuous glucose monitors. They send us their information.
Yeah.
blown. My mind is blown. John, their blood sugar is here. They have a piece of pie, they have a piece of cake. They take a picture of their blood sugar number.
Yeah.
They take a picture of what they ate. And then they take a picture of the graph for an hour to an hour and a half to 2 hours out. And there's no blood sugar spike whatsoever.
No.
It's flat.
You would expect it to.
You would.
Yeah.
And when they eat it, I've had a very lovely gentleman stand in front of the counter, and his wife was purchasing him a piece of cake, and he took a bite. Actually, it was a cupcake at that time. He took a bite of the cupcake, and he said to me, "There's sugar in this." And I said, "No, sir, there's not." He says, "Well, I don't know where you're getting this, but whoever you're getting this from is lying to you. There's sugar in it." And I said, "Well, no, because we bake it right here."
You know it.
There,
right?
and he just couldn't. And then I think he was a little embarrassed that he had this reaction.
Yeah.
But it just tasted so good that he couldn't believe it. So the diabetic issue is very close to my heart, because that is the next epidemic.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Oh, it's no question.
No question about it.
Yeah,
and just pumping people full of insulin to eat whatever you want, spike your blood sugar, take insulin to bring it down.
Yeah.
How is that healthy?
My wife will love this podcast.
Okay.
But so will a lot of other people that are watching us. I say, go visit you and on 7th in Quebec, and try some of the things that you're making there. It's just unbelievable, extremely friendly, and obviously based on good health. Now, the other thing that I'm doing, I'm writing another book right now. We are working on it, and the title of the book will be Living Young, Dying Old.
Wonderful.
And the whole objective is that it's not necessarily the years, but it's the quality of life that you can live along the way. And so my objective is that being careful with my diet, staying physically in shape, and then learning from people like yourself and others. My objective is to be 120. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that is possible.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
Not at all.
And so as I'm writing the book, I'm going to interview you as well, so they can quote you and your thoughts and the experiences that you had, to have you in a way a small part of the book as well as to what you're doing, because you're the example of what I do. So often what we see now with people is that they reach the mid-40s and now they have all kinds of medicine they have to take, and that for everything you take, it's not natural to your body and creates probably more problems than it solves, or other ones. Yeah. And then the quality of life usually disappears. Yes. And there is no reason for that. And I'm very fortunate. So far, I'm going to be 83 November the 1st. But I still feel fit. I'm, as I said, 80-20. Very careful about diet.
Yes.
My wife helps me in the process, making sure that that if we take supplements, we take the right ones. We understand the diet and what it will do to your body, and understand all of that. Mm-hmm. You know, and
Well, we get many people who come in and share their stories with us. Not too long ago, a family came in, and I noticed them being very careful to look at what was available, and they kept calming down a small child and saying, I could overhear the dad saying, "Just be quiet, sweetie, just let me ask the questions, because we don't know for sure."
Yeah. And
I paid attention to this, but so he started asking me questions about what was in the baking, and did I know for sure, like do I trust this baking? And I answered all his questions sufficiently. Well, it turns out their 7-year-old was having problems with her body, and they couldn't figure out what was going on. And she was supposed to be participating in some sports, and she wasn't able to. And she says, "Daddy, my legs just aren't doing what I want them to do." And because I think he was thinking maybe he needed to scold her, but she was genuine and saying, "My legs just are not doing what I want them to do." He had a glucose monitor and he put it on her, and her blood sugar was so high that they took her to emerge. She's 7, and obviously they've gone through the medical system, and her pancreas just had quit. And her blood sugar was so high that it was physically extremely dangerous for her. So then they went through the huge process of learning what was spiking her blood sugar, what was doing this, because this, of course, isn't common knowledge. We're not taught this. That's reserved for just the diabetic community, generally speaking. And a lot of the foods that are commercially made for diabetic people are not necessarily healthy. They just aren't. They're chemicals.
Exactly.
So he went through the process of researching, which is why he came and asked me a great deal of questions.
Yeah.
So she was so excited when he gave the okay that she could have something from the cooler. So she hadn't been able to have cake or ice cream in so long. She started dancing in front of the bakery display. She had a piece of cake. They took a picture of her blood sugar and then messaged me this beautiful testimonial of how happy, and she just couldn't stop talking about the experience that she had, and she could actually have cake. And now we've just introduced ice cream, as you know.
Yeah.
You tried some of our ice cream.
Yeah, I did. It was very, very good.
So we're doing a healthy ice cream every day.
Yeah.
I make a fresh artisan batch every day. Today was coffee with a lot of espresso in it, and it was lovely. But every day we're doing a new thing. But this is not spiking people's blood sugar. And you remember what I had mentioned about just losing the enjoyment of being able to sit down and enjoy something like a dessert, because we always feel guilty having those, what has been called empty calories.
Yeah.
That's no longer an issue. It's actually part of your meal when you have something, and you can enjoy your dessert and feel good about what you're putting into your body, not feel guilty.
And the body is such a forgiving organ, if you wish. It's so forgiving with all the things that we do, but then we can be so abusive of it with what the diets that we eat and the diet that we have. And a lot of times that particular diet or what we eat, is what causes the problems as we go and further into life.
And it's just the standard North American diet.
Yeah.
It's not, people don't know that they're hurting themselves, or that they're potentially setting themselves up to be insulin resistant.
And I want to have that as part of the book, saying, living young, dying old. Is basically, there's no reason that, and that's why I say I want to be 120, and and that's what I'm aiming for, and and that's what you want to do.
Wonderful. I think you can do it.
Deb, it was a pleasure meeting you. I'm going to sign your books now, and then I'll give you a big hug once we can stand as once we are unhugged, unhooked.